Give it a shot.
Aloha, everybody.
Aloha.
All right. What I'm going to do in this presentation is going to be mimicking the same thing I'm going to do in the phone-in briefings Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. That will come later in terms of what that's going to be about. But if you have your iPads, you can follow along with me, or your smartphones. Starting out, you need to have some kind of confidence in the forecast. So what I have done is displayed a 96-hour forecast 4 days ago and compared it with this morning's 12Z analysis. And I think that from the major features, your Eastern Pacific high on the analysis, this weak low, which was a lot stronger a few days ago, is now weakening. The prediction was for the high to be split in two centers. There's only one major center. That doesn't change the orientation or the strength of the wind flow on the eastern side of the Pacific high. So you have to be able to read this to ascertain that this is a pretty good forecast in terms of the major systems, the orientation of the isobars. So your confidence level from this point on, based on the ability to forecast out in time, should be pretty solid. The next thing you need to look at is the marine discussion from the forecasting from the OPC. And I'm not going to go into every little nuance here, but they're really focusing on where the hazardous conditions are. In this case, typically Northern California. That's where the gale conditions are classical for this time of the year. Sometimes they can reach as far south as Point Conception. This is not the case here. But they also talk about sometimes which models that they're gravitating to. So for those that are really into the GRIBs, you can pay attention to the biases in which model the forecast is thinking and which model your GRIBs are based on. The next what we're going to go through is the briefing package from the OPC. And this is designed with you guys in mind here. This is a complete analysis through 96 hours of upper 500 millibar, surface pressure, and wave height information. So this morning's 12Z shows a weak trough along the west coast, much weaker than it was even a week ago, pretty darn strong, and a very strong ridge dominates the east central Pacific, indicated by this upper level high center and ridging north. And here's that little reflection that I talked about with a weakening low. This is not going to be a player in the next couple of days, but you need to focus in on what's happening in the Aleutians and in the Bering Sea as this moves southward. It could impact the strengthening Pacific high beyond 4 days, and we'll take a look at that when we go beyond 96 hours. So we're going to scroll down here. This is the 500 millipart and the surface reflection. That's his 12Z. And again, you can pretty much see where the strong winds are in the gradient. This is pretty set up for a typical summertime pattern. And the weakening low to the north of the Hawaiian Islands. Obviously, this is not going to be around by the time you get into that vicinity, so the gradient should fill in by that time. So we go further south or further on. This is a chart that's updated every 3 hours. These are actual observations from ships or buoys, and because it may not match the either 12 or 00 every 3 hours, a lot of this will be buoy reports, especially along the coastal areas. This is in feet, and the isoplus of wave height are in feet. So obviously we talked about gales in Northern California. Further south, it's a lot weaker. So we scroll down, and this is a once a day 00 wave height analysis in meters. The regional charts are in feet. This is in meters, and the dashed lines are just intermediate isoplus of significant wave height. So again, where's all the action in Northern California and a little bit offshore, west of 120 west. The synoptic wind is really in play at this point. So this is the 24-hour forecast, and again, pay attention to this upper level trough that's beginning to show a pretty good presence over the approaching the western Gulf of Alaska, and how is it going to impact the upper level ridge beyond 96 hours is what we're going to focus on. So the 24-hour forecast, again, pretty typical. Your gales in Northern California are a lot weaker in Southern California around the race time. When we start looking at the local stuff, 10 or 15 knots of wind are in play for the Santa Barbara Channel on Monday here. But this is 24 hours. And again, we're looking at the wind and wave charts, a little bit more detail here. You can see where the stronger winds are, west of 120 west and further to the north, and 10 to 15 knot winds outside of Point Conception rules from out of the north-northwest here. So we look at 48 hours, and so what are we looking at? This is 12Z on the 8th. Start time is it the 8th? Okay, so pretty darn close. Again, here's the upper level trough making its way into the Gulf of Alaska, eroding a little bit of the ridge here. This is an important feature to watch, and this pesky upper level low is still present, although not much on the surface should be expected. So when we look at the surface pressure map, okay, the upper level low presence is a little bit of a trough in and around the longitude of Hawaii, not a factor. One consolidated high, and the gradient between the interior low and the offshore high shows pretty substantial gradient west of 120 west. Okay, so when we look at the wind and wave chart, now this is full ocean, it's in meters, everybody. You've got to be able to make sure you have your regional charts in feet and your full ocean charts in meters. And again, the stronger conditions are going to be up to the north, but you can see a steady 10 to 15 knot northerly wind west of 120 west. And even a northwest wind inside 120 west at 15 knots. So we'll scroll down a little further, and now we're into a fairly significant product to look at. And this is the primary swell energy direction, or wave energy direction, which is mainly swell. So the strength of the eastern Pacific high is showing a dominant northerly swell. And you need to pay attention to the potential southern hemisphere swell, which is well to the west of the Hawaiian Islands. So the strength of the eastern Pacific high is suppressing the southern hemisphere swell, and you will experience a little bit of that during the race. After all, the roaring 40s and screaming 50s didn't get their name for no reason. So here's a significant change here. The trough has really extended itself pretty far south in the Gulf of Alaska off the west coast. So for the start time on Wednesday, this is of particular interest. The high is then pushed further to the west, but it's pretty strong. It's pretty strong. So the center of the surface high, instead of being near 140 west, is in and around 150 west. But 1039 is really getting up there for this time of the year. And you can see all the isobars that are surrounding it, which suggest a strong 20-25 knot gradient, northerly, northwesterly, north of 30, and then the winds begin to veer to the traditional northeast trade winds, if you would, south of 30. And you can see how the knuckle of the ridge is a little bit further to the west than it would normally be. So, the wind and wave forecast. The detail here is a little bit lacking, but nevertheless you get the idea of 20-25 knot winds are going to be dominant by 96 hours. So when is that? 96 hours is 12Z on the 10th, which is Wednesday, I believe.
Yeah, day before it started.
Right before it started, 12Z. So now, what about beyond Wednesday? So I'm going to switch to the Weather Prediction Center that provides days forecast through 3 through 7. So I'm gonna switch back to if I can move it. Nope. This is day 6, which is if I can get the time right here. Doesn't say so. I'm gonna say this is 120 hours. So this is on Thursday, and again, the presence of the low in the becoming a little bit weaker, but nevertheless the grading is quite pronounced here. So we'll go out to the local conditions. So this is from the National Weather Service forecast office in Oxnard. And so the area that you see hashed in green here, you can click on any point as you go into the page, and it'll give you a spot forecast for a given latitude and longitude. And again, what are we looking at? Monday is calling for winds light in the morning and then 10 to 20 knots in the afternoon, right at the time that you're going to be leaving. So that's not too bad. So this is local. This is digital, but human interface. Okay. Part of the digital forecast system of the National Weather Service is the ability to either talk about winds and wave height, and you can click on that, and this is not showing up as I hoped it would. But here is an important feature to look at. This is satellite imagery, animated, and it shows the cloud structure, pretty thick overcast stratocumulus, and as you see the clouds going from north-northwest to south-southeast, that indicates a pretty good gradient of wind. So very, very solid here. And there's a little evidence of an eddy a little bit further to the south of Catalina, but that's is not going to alter the forecast of west to northwest winds in the Santa Barbara Channel on the first go-around. Now, this is not a forecast. This is satellite image. This is real-time animation from a few hours ago up to the most current graphic. So it's a 3-hourly type of pixel arrangement. Okay. Are there any questions here?